This isn't analysis. This is a public execution. Just not mine.
My wife's younger sister just became CEO of the company where I've worked for 11 years. And she decided her first major move would be to publicly humiliate me in front of the entire executive team. It didn't go the way she planned, and what followed nearly destroyed my marriage, my career, and my family. But somehow we found a way through it that I never saw coming. Let me give you some context because this story needs it to make any sense. I'm a VP of Client Strategy at a consulting firm called Sterling Solutions. Been there since right out of grad school when I was 25 years old, worked my way up through 4 promotions over the years, built relationships with our biggest clients from scratch, generated over $43 million in revenue over the past 3 years alone. The company was founded by my father-in-law, Robert, who retired about 6 weeks ago after running it successfully for 15 years, and handed the CEO position to his daughter, Lisa, who is my wife, Amanda's younger sister. Lisa has always been dramatic, even as a kid growing up in their family. Family dinners were always about her stories, her accomplishments, her grand vision for the future. Everything had to revolve around her somehow. But becoming CEO at 29 seemed to amplify all of that intensity by a factor of 10. She married into the family around the same time I did, about 8 years ago. And there's always been this weird, unspoken competition between us about who really belongs in the family, who earned their place versus who just married in and got lucky. Friday morning, I'm sitting in conference room 4C for the quarterly review with the executive team. It's one of those rooms with fluorescent lights that give you a headache and windows overlooking the financial district. 19 executives total sitting around this massive table, going through the usual parade of metrics and milestones. Revenue up, client retention strong, market position solid. I'd built most of those numbers personally over the past decade, with late nights and early mornings and weekends spent managing crisis calls from clients who needed immediate help. Then Lisa gets this look on her face, like she's about to do something she's been planning for weeks, and says she wants to address something concerning her before we move to new business. There's this shift in the room atmosphere, that particular change that happens when people sense something bad is coming. She clicks to the next slide with this theatrical flourish that would have been impressive in different circumstances, and my name appears in 72-point font. Below it, my entire compensation package, broken down in excruciating detail that made me want to crawl under the table. Base salary, $280,000, performance bonus, $70,000, total $350,000. The room went absolutely dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Lisa launches into this clearly prepared speech about how she's had 3 independent firms verify that my compensation is 55% above market rate for comparable positions in our industry. She's pacing around the front of the room like a prosecutor making closing arguments in a homicide trial, talking about resource allocation and market competitiveness and how previous leadership, meaning her father Robert, was too comfortable to make tough calls. She's basically saying my father-in-law was weak for paying me what I'm worth. I'm sitting there watching this unfold, and I can feel every pair of eyes in the room on me, measuring my reaction. The CFO Marcus is suddenly fascinated by his notebook. Sarah, the COO, won't meet my eyes. Everyone knows this is wrong, but nobody's going to say anything. Then she shows another slide with color-coded bar graphs comparing my salary to industry averages, regional medians, competitor rates. Every single bar is coded bright red to emphasize how supposedly overpaid I am. Someone had spent hours, maybe days, making this presentation as humiliating as possible, the visual equivalent of a scarlet letter rendered in PowerPoint. She says she wants to be clear that this isn't personal, that I've done adequate work. But we're running a business, not a charity, and we can't justify paying me a premium for tenure rather than performance. Adequate work. Those 2 words landed like a physical slap, after bringing in 3 of their largest clients from competitors, after saving the Henderson account when it was 90 seconds from walking out the door forever, after personally training half the people sitting in that room on client retention strategies that became company standard, adequate. I set my coffee cup down very carefully on the mahogany table, the porcelain meeting wood, with a soft click that somehow carried in the silence. Everyone's watching me now, waiting for the defense, the plea, the justification. That's what Lisa wanted. A public diminishment, where I'd have to justify my worth and she could reject my arguments to establish her authority as the new CEO. Instead, I stood up slowly, gathered my notebook, my phone, my portfolio folder with quarterly projections she hadn't bothered asking about. Every movement deliberate and unhurried. I'd learned a long time ago that rushing makes you look guilty, and I had absolutely nothing to apologize for. Lisa's face started showing uncertainty because this wasn't following her script. She repeated my name, said we weren't finished with the presentation, that she had several recommendations for restructuring my role and compensation package that I'd want to hear. I told her I was sure she had thoroughly researched recommendations and I was sure they were very well thought out. 3 independent firms, she'd said, all confirming the same thing. Then I told her she didn't understand how this business actually works. She'd been CEO for 6 weeks and thought compensation analysis told her everything about value. I said she'd decided to stage this little performance in front of 19 witnesses because she wanted to make a point about her leadership style. The room went completely still. Sarah's eyes went wide. Marcus stopped writing. Lisa's face was cycling through emotions too fast to name. I told her she didn't have to fire me, didn't have to restructure my role, didn't have to have another meeting about market benchmarks. I resigned effective immediately, just like that. Lisa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She'd wanted submission, not departure. This wasn't the outcome she'd planned with whatever advisors helped her prepare this ambush. Then I said one more thing before leaving. I told her she might want to check how much of that $43 million in annual revenue was tied to personal relationships rather than company reputation because I was guessing her market benchmark analysis didn't account for that variable. I walked out, didn't wait for a response, didn't look back, just left conference room 4C, took the elevator down 15 floors, and stepped out into the November cold Chicago morning feeling absolutely nothing but cold clarity after years of confusion. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the lobby. Text from Marcus, the CFO, saying that took guts and to call him later. From Sarah saying Lisa didn't know what she'd just done. I silenced the phone because I had more important calls to make. The rest of Friday was a blur of strategic activity and carefully controlled anger. I went straight to the office of Christopher Morgan, who runs a competing consulting firm called Morgan Strategic Group in River North. He'd been trying to recruit me for 3 years, sending LinkedIn messages I'd politely declined because I was loyal to Sterling and to Robert, who'd given me my start. Last month, Christopher had sent another message saying his door was always open if I was ready to walk through it. Well, now I was ready. His office occupied the corner of the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Chicago. Lake Michigan stretched gray and infinite to the east. He offered me scotch even though it was only 10:30 in the morning. I accepted. I told Christopher everything. The presentation with my salary on the screen, the public humiliation in front of 19 people, Lisa's commentary about adequate work and market benchmarks. He listened without interrupting, occasionally swirling scotch in his glass, and when I finished, he actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. He said Lisa had just made a catastrophic error in judgment that would be taught in business schools as a case study. She'd evaluated me like a line item on a spreadsheet instead of recognizing me as an asset. And that kind of mistake was terminal stupidity. He said she'd forgotten that consulting firms run on relationships, not organizational charts. We spent hours working out a deal and the details. Senior partner position with better compensation than I'd been making at Sterling. Base $320,000, performance bonus structure that topped out at $200,000, but would realistically hit between $120 and $160 based on my historical numbers. Full benefits package, equity participation after year 1, partnership, track consideration after 18 months. And this was the important part. I'd keep my book of business. Any clients who chose to follow me would be credited to my performance metrics. Christopher said he wasn't offering me a job, he was offering me a stake in building something real. Help him build Morgan Strategic into something that competed directly with Sterling, and I'd own a piece of what we created together. But here's where everything gets complicated and messy and painful. While we're negotiating this deal at Christopher's office, I'm getting increasingly frantic texts from my wife Amanda. Her family is freaking out. Lisa's apparently crying. Their mother Margaret wants us all to come to dinner tomorrow to talk through the situation like adults and find some middle ground. Amanda says Thanksgiving is going to be impossible if we don't fix this. I told Amanda what Lisa did with the presentation, gave her all the details about my salary being displayed on a screen in 72-point font and being called adequate in front of the entire executive team. She She was genuinely horrified and angry at her sister. She couldn't believe Lisa would do something that cruel and short-sighted. But she's also caught between her sister and her husband, between family loyalty and supporting her spouse in a justified decision. I decided to send a message to my 43 priority clients that afternoon, the ones I'd flagged as stars in my contacts over the years. These were the decision makers, the influence holders, the people who had my personal cell number and actually used it regularly at all hours. I drafted something professional and brief, just enough information to raise questions without airing our dirty laundry publicly. After 11 years at Sterling Solutions, I'd made the decision to explore new opportunities. I wanted them to hear it directly from me before any official announcements. Grateful for our partnership over the years, hoping to continue working together in a new capacity soon, would follow up with details next week. I sat there with my thumb hovering over the send button for a solid minute, maybe longer. This would start something I couldn't stop once it began. This would set off a chain reaction that would hit Sterling's revenue like a meteor strike. This would hurt people I'd worked with for years, good people who hadn't asked for any of this mess. Then I thought about Lisa's face as she'd said adequate work, about the carefully color-coded graphs designed to make me look like a parasite feeding off the company, about 19 witnesses to my public humiliation who'd just sat there silently watching. I pressed send. The message went out to 43 clients simultaneously at around 3 in the afternoon. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with responses. Concerned questions asking what happened, requests for clarification, several immediate replies saying they'd follow me wherever I went because they valued our relationship. Patricia from Westfield Industries called within an hour asking what was going on because their quarterly strategy rollout was in 3 weeks. And she absolutely couldn't have uncertainty right now. Michael from Riverside Capital texted saying I was the only reason they'd stayed with Sterling for 4 years, and whatever I decided to do next, count them in. That night, Amanda came home around 6:30 and we had the first real knockdown fight of our 8-year marriage. She'd been fielding calls from her family all afternoon. She said this was going to destroy her father's company, that his legacy was being torn apart, that her sister was falling apart emotionally. I said her sister destroyed it when she decided public humiliation was acceptable leadership and that I wasn't responsible for cleaning up Lisa's mess. I told Amanda about the presentation again in even more detail, about sitting there feeling like I was being publicly executed while Lisa served up my compensation like evidence of corruption, about the graphs and the charts and the 19 witnesses and the adequate work comment that made 11 years of dedication sound worthless. Amanda wanted me to be reasonable, to help Lisa understand what she did wrong so we could all move forward together as a family. She wanted me to be the bigger person, to show Lisa how to fix the situation before it got worse. But I was completely done being reasonable. I'd been reasonable for 11 years while building that company's success, and look where it got me. Publicly humiliated in front of the entire executive team by my wife's little sister, who'd been CEO for 6 weeks. The next day was Saturday, and everything got progressively worse. Christopher called early with advice about information management and operational security. He said anything I told Amanda would inevitably get back to Lisa through family channels because that's how families work. Amanda was a natural peacemaker, always trying to fix things and build bridges. And while she was trying to fix it, Lisa would be getting advance warning about every strategic move I planned to make. He suggested I keep details vague, which felt like lying by omission, but also felt tactically necessary. Saturday morning, Amanda's mother, Margaret, called, wanting us at brunch at 11 o'clock at her house in Evanston. Lisa would be there wanting to talk through the situation like adults and find some middle ground everyone could live with. I really didn't want to go, but Amanda insisted firmly. She said her sister screwed up badly, but we needed to at least try to find some solution that didn't blow up both our families permanently. Before brunch, I got a text from Marcus, the CFO at Sterling. He said he wanted to give me an unofficial heads up that Lisa had called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning at 7. Rumors were spreading fast that she was preparing to announce I'd been terminated for cause, that my departure was actually a firing she'd decided on for performance issues. She was going to lie about what happened, rewrite history, turn my resignation into a firing so she could control the narrative before I could. I called Christopher immediately and told him. He swore creatively and said Lisa was trying to get ahead of my resignation, make it look like I didn't quit voluntarily but was pushed out for legitimate performance concerns. It was actually smart strategy, extremely dirty but tactically sound. By the time we issued our press release Monday morning, she'd have already poisoned the well with the board and probably started calling clients with her carefully crafted version of events. Christopher said we needed to move faster than planned. Issue the announcement Sunday night at 10 p.m. when weekend news cycles were looking for Monday morning stories to fill space. Get ahead of her board meeting, make her announcement look reactive instead of definitive. Control the narrative before she could spin it. I spent Saturday afternoon making reassurance calls to clients, telling them to hold tight until Sunday night when I'd make a major announcement they'd want to wait for before making any decisions. Patricia agreed to wait, though she was clearly nervous. Michael agreed to wait and said he trusted me. Alexandra from Thornton Industries was more skeptical, but agreed to give me until Monday before making any moves. Amanda went to brunch alone after we fought about it. I stayed home on client calls that absolutely couldn't wait until Monday. When she got back around 2, she was exhausted and furious. She said Lisa had spent 2 hours explaining why she was justified in what she did, claiming she was just trying to establish fiscal responsibility and I'd overreacted. Their mother spent 2 hours trying to get Amanda to convince me to come back and work things out. Amanda spent 2 hours wanting to throw her mimosa at both of them. She said Lisa kept framing it as me refusing to listen to her reasonable restructuring plan, refusing to be collaborative about market realities. Sunday afternoon, we finalized everything at Christopher's office downtown. He brought in Rebecca, their communications director, and Tyler, a PR consultant they worked with regularly. We spent hours crafting the perfect press release that would accomplish our objectives. We'd announce my move to Morgan Strategic at 10 p.m. Sunday night with carefully chosen language about disagreements over compensation structure and strategic direction under new leadership. Not inflammatory enough to trigger a defamation lawsuit, but clear enough that anyone reading between the lines would understand Lisa had badly mishandled the situation. Rebecca showed me the media strategies she'd developed, explaining which outlets would break the story first, which reporters had been briefed confidentially, what the expected pickup would be across business media. Tyler prepped me extensively on talking points for Monday morning calls with both clients and reporters, how to frame the transition in terms of opportunity rather than conflict or drama. The key was staying relentlessly positive. Excited about Morgan, looking forward to new challenges, appreciative of time at Sterling but ready for the next chapter of my career. Never badmouth Lisa directly, never engage with questions about internal conflicts. Keep it professional and forward-looking always. Amanda and I had another huge, devastating fight Sunday evening. She'd come back to the apartment and somehow saw drafts of what we were planning. She realized I was going to war with her sister, that this wasn't just about protecting my reputation, but about publicly damaging Lisa's credibility as a leader. She said I was enjoying this, enjoying having the power to hurt Lisa back after being hurt myself. Maybe she was right about that. Part of me definitely wanted Lisa to feel exactly what I felt sitting in that conference room. Amanda told me she'd received a fellowship offer at Cambridge for next semester that she'd been considering. 6 months in England, starting in January, teaching and doing research. She said she needed space to figure out who I'd become, because the person plotting how to inflict maximum damage on her sister wasn't the person she'd married 8 years ago. That hurt worse than anything Lisa had done. The thought of losing my marriage over this corporate warfare was absolutely devastating. But I felt too far committed to this path to stop now. The press release went live at exactly 10 p.m. Sunday night. Within minutes, we got confirmation emails showing successful delivery to Chicago Tribune Business Section, Crane's Chicago Business, Reuters Financial, Bloomberg Chicago Bureau, and 17 other media outlets. Then Crane's posted the story first because their weekend editor apparently had nothing better to do than refresh his inbox. The headline was diplomatic, but the article underneath was absolutely brutal for Lisa. The story mentioned the $43 million in revenue I generated as VP of Client Strategy, noted the timing coming just 6 weeks after Lisa became CEO, quoted anonymous sources about disagreements over compensation and strategic direction, and raised pointed questions about stability at Sterling Solutions under new leadership. Christopher had his laptop angled so we could all watch the story populate in real time, and I found myself reading about my own career transition like it was happening to someone else. My phone absolutely exploded. Texts from clients, from former colleagues, from reporters I'd never met asking for comment on my surprising departure. And then Lisa sent me a direct message saying I'd done this on purpose the night before her board meeting, that I'd wanted to humiliate her publicly. She said her father Robert called her crying because of what I'd done to his company. She said Amanda wouldn't talk to her or answer her calls, that I'd turned her own sister against her. She asked if I was proud of myself for destroying her. That hit harder than I expected it to. Robert crying. Robert, who'd given me my first real job 11 years ago, who'd believed in me when I was fresh out of grad school and terrified of failing. Robert, who'd built Sterling from nothing and trusted his daughter to carry it forward. But I couldn't let that emotional response derail me now. I was committed to this path and had to see it through to the end. Monday morning started at 6 a.m. sharp with client calls. I'd made a detailed list prioritizing them by importance and likelihood of following me to Morgan. Patricia from Westfield first because she'd expressed the most concern. Then Michael from Riverside Capital. Then Alexandra from Thornton Industries. 3 critical conversations, all variations on the same basic theme. Something significant was happening with my career, details coming throughout the day. Please trust me and wait before making any hasty decisions about your consulting relationships. Patricia from Westfield Industries was direct as always, no-nonsense approach to business. She said their Q1 strategy rollout was in 3 weeks, and she absolutely couldn't have uncertainty disrupting that timeline. I told her Morgan Strategic had full capacity to handle their entire portfolio without any disruption. Same level of service, same strategic approach, same point of contact, which was me. Only difference was the letterhead at the top of documents. She asked specifically if Morgan had the infrastructure to handle their scale, since Westfield operated in 6 countries. I assured her they did, and said I wouldn't have made this move if I didn't believe Morgan could serve her even better than Sterling had. She agreed to wait for a formal transition proposal by end of day. Michael from Riverside Capital was more cautious about the change. He said he liked me personally and trusted my judgment, that I'd given them solid guidance on 3 major acquisitions over our 4 years working together. But Riverside had a 12-year relationship with Sterling that predated my arrival there. He couldn't just unilaterally pull their business because I'd changed firms. We ended up agreeing on a split engagement structure where they'd keep Sterling for existing portfolio work, but bring Morgan in for new initiatives and projects. Not ideal, but definitely better than losing them entirely. By 8 a.m., I'd secured 3 complete transitions to Morgan, 4 split engagements that would benefit both firms, and lost 2 accounts entirely to institutional loyalty and risk aversion. The math worked out to about $17 million in revenue, moved either fully or partially to Morgan. Significant impact, absolutely, but not the catastrophic blow to Sterling I'd been secretly hoping would vindicate my decision. Lisa would suffer and her board would have serious questions, but she'd ultimately survive this. Then things got considerably worse. Around 9:30, I got a call from Alexandra at Thornton Industries that changed the equation. She said she'd just gotten off the phone with Lisa personally, who was offering them a 20% discount on all engagement fees if they stayed with Sterling rather than following me to Morgan. Lisa was fighting back aggressively, using price competition to retain clients I'd thought were secured. It was actually smart strategy, exactly the kind of aggressive countermove I should have anticipated but somehow hadn't. I had to call Christopher immediately with this development. He said we needed to offer 15% discounts for first quarter, only as a transition incentive, then back to standard rates after clients saw our value proposition. Over the next 3 hours, I was constantly making calls and negotiating and matching Lisa's discounts wherever I could afford to. By noon, my final tally was about $14 million in committed revenue, another $3 million in split engagements that could go either way, and $10 million lost to competition or client decisions to stay with Sterling. $17 million total, less than 2/3 of my original book of business. Enough to justify my senior partner position at Morgan, but nowhere near the devastating impact I'd carefully planned. That afternoon, I got a call I absolutely wasn't expecting. Karen Blackwell, the board chair at Sterling Solutions. She said she was calling in her official capacity as board chair to discuss the events of the past few days. My departure had raised significant concerns among board members about leadership stability and strategic direction. She wanted an off-the-record conversation about what led to my decision to leave so suddenly. I was extremely careful in what I said, but basically confirmed the key facts. Lisa had presented my compensation breakdown to the executive team without any warning, publicly stated I was 55% above market rate, called my work adequate in front of 19 people. Karen listened quietly and then said she'd spent the past 3 hours reviewing exactly what happened in that Friday presentation, talking to multiple executives who were in the room witnessing it. She said what happened to me was completely unacceptable, that the board takes these matters extremely seriously, that they absolutely don't condone public humiliation as a management technique, regardless of strategic justification. Then she dropped the absolute bomb that changed everything. The board would like to explore whether there's a realistic path forward where I return to Sterling in a significantly revised capacity. Same compensation I'd been making before, expanded authority across divisions, direct report to the board rather than to Lisa. They'd position it publicly as strategic elevation, recognition of my value to the firm. I was genuinely stunned into silence. The board was offering me my job back. Better than my job back, actually. They were offering me a position that would essentially make me Lisa's peer, or possibly superior, removing me from her direct authority while keeping me at Sterling. It was everything I'd wanted Friday morning when I walked out of that conference room. Complete vindication that I was valuable, and Lisa had made a catastrophic mistake. But I'd already signed papers with Morgan Strategic. I'd already issued that devastating press release Sunday night. I'd already committed myself to this path publicly. Taking the Sterling offer now would make me look like a mercenary opportunist who'd played both firms against each other purely for personal leverage. I told Karen I genuinely needed time to think about it. I called Christopher immediately and told him about the board's unexpected offer. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. Then he said if I went back to Sterling, I'd humiliate him personally, destroy my credibility in the industry permanently, and prove I was exactly the kind of opportunist everyone would assume I was. But he also acknowledged it was ultimately my decision to make. He said I needed to decide what I actually wanted independent of what Amanda wanted or what made for the easiest family Thanksgiving dinners. Then Amanda's father, Robert, called me directly on my personal cell. He said he'd spent the entire weekend hearing conflicting stories from different people and wanted to understand the truth from my perspective. I told him everything in detail. The presentation, the salary on the screen, the humiliation in front of 19 people, the adequate work comment, my decision to leave. Robert said Lisa's approach was completely inappropriate and unprofessional, and he was genuinely sorry I'd been subjected to that. Then he asked directly if there was any realistic path forward where I'd seriously reconsider the board's offer. I thought carefully about it and realized the board's offer wasn't actually enough to fix things. It didn't address the fundamental problem that Lisa viewed leadership as dominance and control, rather than collaboration and trust building. Bringing me back in an enhanced role without actually developing Lisa as a leader would just postpone the next inevitable crisis. She'd resent the board's intervention in her authority. I'd resent having to constantly work around her, and eventually something else would explode even worse. Robert was quiet for a very long time processing that. Then he asked what exactly I was proposing as an alternative. That's when it hit me like lightning. The third path that nobody had considered yet. I told Robert I'd stay at Morgan Strategic and build my practice there, but we'd negotiate a consulting arrangement where Sterling became a Morgan client. I'd work with Lisa personally on leadership development and strategic planning. Not for her as an employee, but with her as a consultant. The board gets continuity in my expertise without the toxic dynamic of me returning as her peer. Lisa gets actual professional support and mentoring, instead of being set up to fail publicly. And I get to build my career at Morgan while still contributing positively to Sterling's success. Robert was quiet again, processing this creative solution. Then he said it was actually brilliant and might work for everyone. He said he'd present the proposal to the board and to Lisa personally. I told Amanda about this third path idea, and for the first time in several days, she smiled genuinely. She said I was trying to fix things instead of just winning, trying to find a solution that didn't require anyone to be completely destroyed. Wednesday afternoon, I went back to Sterling's offices for the board meeting where they'd decide on my unusual proposal. Walking into that building felt absolutely surreal. Same glass and steel exterior, same security desk in the lobby, same elevator banks. But I was fundamentally different now. Not an angry employee seeking vindication, but someone genuinely trying to repair what I'd helped break. The board was gathered in the main conference room on the 15th floor. Karen Blackwell was there as chair, along with Robert, Lisa, and 3 other board members I recognized. Lisa looked absolutely exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, her professional armor visibly crumpled. She met my gaze briefly, then looked away quickly. Before they gave me their answer, Karen said Lisa wanted to say something first. Lisa took a deep breath and apologized. Really, truly apologized. She said she'd spent 3 entire days trying to figure out how to respond to what happened. Part of her was still angry that I didn't give her a chance to explain or apologize before going nuclear with that press release. But the biggest part of her recognized that she created this entire situation by approaching that presentation the way she did. She said she was desperately trying to prove she was tough enough to be CEO at 29, trying to show the board and the executives that she could make hard, unpopular calls. She chose me as the example because I was family, safe, someone she thought would understand it wasn't actually personal. But she was wrong. It was deeply personal, regardless of her intentions. And she was genuinely sorry for the pain she'd caused. The apology landed completely differently this time. Not in a living room with family members trying to mediate and smooth things over, but in a conference room with witnesses and real professional consequences on the table. I thanked her and genuinely meant it. Karen presented the board's official decision. They were accepting my proposal. 6-month initial engagement with options for renewal based on results. I'd work with Lisa personally on leadership development, strategic planning, and client relationship management. All compensation would flow through Morgan Strategic, maintaining the separation and boundaries I needed. But both of us had to fully commit to making it work. Lisa and I both agreed we could do that. Lisa walked me to the elevator afterward in awkward silence. She said this was weird, but maybe good weird. I agreed it was definitely weird. As the elevator doors started closing slowly, she called out thanking me for not giving up on them completely. The doors closed before I could respond, but I felt something fundamental shift inside. Not quite forgiveness yet, but the beginning of something that might eventually become it. I called Amanda from the cab heading back downtown. I told her it worked, they accepted the proposal. She said, "Oh, thank God," and that she was genuinely proud of me for finding this solution. I asked if this meant she wasn't going to Cambridge. She said she was still going, but now because she wanted the fellowship opportunity, not because she needed distance from me. That was completely different. She said if I could turn corporate warfare into collaboration, we could definitely handle 6 months apart. It's been 17 days since that Friday morning presentation. Lisa and I meet every Wednesday now at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue that's become our neutral ground, then head to Morgan's offices for our formal consulting sessions. We work on leadership skills, conflict management, strategic planning, board communication. She's actually improving week by week. The clients who followed me are staying with Morgan. Several are even expanding their engagements. The board seems genuinely satisfied with the progress. Last Wednesday, Lisa asked me directly if I was still angry about what happened. I told her honestly that I wasn't sitting around waiting for her to fail, but I also wasn't going to pretend the humiliation didn't happen or didn't hurt. She said she understood completely, that every time she walks into a board meeting now she sees how they look at her like a child who almost broke something valuable and needs constant supervision. We reviewed Sterling's latest numbers together. Revenue down 61% in the specific client relationships I'd personally managed. 41 clients total have either moved to Morgan or split their engagements between both firms. Lisa said it was absolutely catastrophic for the company, but also instructive for her personally, teaching her that leadership isn't about dominance or proving you're tough enough. It's about building trust so thoroughly that people follow you because they want to, not because organizational charts say they have to. I'm not going to pretend everything is magically fixed now. Lisa and I have a complicated relationship, part professional consulting, part family reconciliation, part mutual therapy session. Some days she still seems angry that I didn't give her a chance to explain before launching my counterattack. Some days I'm still angry about the adequate work comment that dismissed 11 years. But we're genuinely building something real together. Christopher says I'm on track for full partner at Morgan within 6 months based on my performance. My revenue book is up to $21 million now between complete transitions and expanded engagements from clients who appreciated how I handled the crisis. Amanda calls from Cambridge every night, and we're actually communicating better than before all this happened, and Lisa's board presentations are getting noticeably stronger each week. Amanda asked me to promise that when she's gone, I'll keep choosing the third path, keep finding ways to build instead of burn. I promised, and I absolutely mean it. 17 days ago, I thought leadership meant never backing down, never compromising, never showing weakness. I thought being right was worth absolutely any cut, and I was wrong about all of it. Now I'm learning that real leadership is finding solutions nobody else saw coming. The path that doesn't require anyone to be destroyed. It's harder and takes longer, and there's no guarantee it works. But when it does, everybody wins instead of everybody losing. I still don't know if I made all the right choices along the way. Maybe I should have stayed quiet in that meeting. Maybe I shouldn't have sent that press release Sunday night. Maybe the scorched earth approach was exactly wrong. But I'm learning that right and wrong matter less than what you build afterward. Lisa's presentation was terrible and humiliating, but it ultimately gave me an unexpected gift. It forced me to decide who I wanted to be. The man who wins at any cost, or the man who builds something worth winning. I chose to build, and 17 days later, I'm finally understanding that building, however difficult and messy, is the only victory that actually matters. That's my story. My sister-in-law called me overpaid in front of 19 executives. I quit, joined their competitor, issued a devastating press release, almost destroyed both her career and my marriage, moved $17 million in revenue, and then somehow found a way to turn corporate warfare into genuine collaboration. It's messy and imperfect and still evolving every week. But it's real. And being real is worth infinitely more than being right.